Story 1. I have never told a story like this before, but I can't stop thinking about it. Maybe writing it down will help. I don't care if you believe me. Heck, part of me still doesn't believe it myself, but something followed us in the woods last weekend, and whatever it wasn't human, and it sure wasn't an animal. Either. I'm a college senior studying to be a doctor. I grew up in western North Carolina, about 40 minutes from Tennessee. My parents still live in a small house tucked away off a gravel road about 15 minutes from the Appalachian Trail. We're used to being alone, spotty electricity, no internet unless you're lucky enough to park near the library. No neighbors for miles. It's the kind of place people think is peaceful until it gets dark. Anyway, between school and work and stress, I hadn't been home in months. When I saw a free weekend, I grabbed it. When my girlfriend Anna said she was free that same weekend, I thought, why not take her somewhere real, somewhere without traffic or phone alerts, just quiet. Anna grew up in Atlanta. She's the kind of person who's never had to look for ticks or hang food away from bears. But she's adventurous. I told her I wanted to take her on a backpacking trip. Just a short 2-day walk on an old loop trail that connects to a forgotten part of the Appalachian Trail. It goes through this place my granddad always warned me to avoid, called Walker's Hollow. She thought the name was creepy in a fun way. I figured it would make the trip more special. We parked at a barely marked spot late Friday afternoon. There was one other car there, an old model with dust all over the windows. No people around. I double-checked my trail map, put on my backpack, and we headed in. The trail was covered in plants. In parts like no one had taken care of it in years. Oak and poplar trees pressed in tight from both sides, and thick patches of rhododendron arched over the path like tunnels. The further we walked, the quieter it got. Not the good kind of quiet either. More like the woods were listening. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to scare Anna. We passed a couple weird signs nailed to trees. Pieces of faded wood with what looked like white paint or maybe old chalk marks. Most were too worn down to read. One had what looked like a shape cut into it, a triangle with a circle in the middle. Someone had scratched it out with a knife. I told myself it was just an old forest mark, nothing strange. After about 5 miles, we reached a good campsite near a little creek. There was a fire pit someone had made years ago, half fallen apart and full of wet leaves. I cleaned it out while Anna unpacked, and we got a small fire going before dark. Dinner was basic, dried out chili mac and 2 lukewarm granola bars, but the air was clean and the forest smelled like wet leaves and wood smoke. For a little while it felt good to be out there again. Anna said the woods were way quieter than she expected. She asked if there were coyotes out here, and I laughed. Then I showed her my old trick. When I was younger, I used to copy coyote howls to see if they'd answer back. Not very useful, but I was good at it. So I stood up, cupped my hands, and let out a long, high howl across the creek bed. She rolled her eyes. That was crazy loud, I grinned. Wait for it. We stood quiet, listening. Nothing, just the sound of the creek and wind shaking the branches above us. I tried again, this time adding some yipping sounds at the end for fun. Still nothing. Maybe they're all curled up in a den somewhere, I said, shrugging. And then it came. A sound answered us, but it wasn't a coyote. It started low, like a whistle caught in the wind, and then climbed into this high, weird screech that seemed to go on too long, like it didn't need to breathe. It came from up the hill behind us, not far. Anna got stiff. What the heck was that? I froze. Bobcat maybe, I said, but I knew that wasn't right. I've heard bobcats. This sounded higher, like metal tearing. Like a scream that didn't know how to stop. Anna moved closer to the fire. That was not a bobcat. I didn't answer, I just looked at the trees. That part of the hill is thick with bushes, especially in fall. Fog had started to roll in. Heavy, getting thick between the trees like smoke. My skin got goosebumps and I could feel the warmth of the fire, but only just barely. We didn't stay up much longer. We put out the fire, zipped into the tent, and lay there. Listening, I kept my headlamp and my knife right beside me. Anna fell asleep finally. I didn't because I kept hearing something moving just past the trees. Something that made a clicking sound when it walked. Something that stopped moving every time I held my breath. And sometime after midnight, I swear to God I saw two pale eyes watching from just beyond the trees. They didn't glow, they just reflected my light. I don't know when I fell asleep. Must have been sometime after 3 when the movement outside finally stopped. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe I just passed out from being so tired, my body finally giving up. Either way, I woke up suddenly just before dawn. That hazy blue light was barely coming through the tent fabric, and my mouth felt dry like I'd been grinding my teeth all night. Anna was still asleep beside me, but she was twitching, her legs jerking under the sleeping bag like she was dreaming of running. And then I heard it again, that clicking. It was faint this time, slower than the night before, like hooves gently tapping against stone or wood. I held my breath. It was circling us. I didn't dare look through the tent mesh this time. I just lay there frozen, trying to tell myself it was a deer, maybe a curious buck, maybe something normal. Then I heard a voice. It sounded like Anna, but it was coming from outside the tent. It was soft, almost whispering, "Hey, come out." Here, her exact way of talking, her exact sound. But Anna was still asleep next to me. I watched her breathing, her lips slack and pale in the cold. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I just waited. The voice repeated, same words, same soft sound. "Come out here," and then everything went quiet again. No birds, no wind, not even the creek. I don't know how long I lay there. But when Anna finally woke up, she said she had the worst dream of her life. That she saw me standing over her in the woods, asking her to follow me into the trees. Only I wasn't wearing a shirt, and my chest was covered in blood. We packed up camp without talking. No jokes, no breakfast. We didn't even talk about going home. We just knew this wasn't just a spooky night in the woods. Something was wrong. Here, wrong in a way I can't really explain. We started hiking fast, our packs bouncing, barely checking the map. But the trail felt wrong. Places I remembered weren't where they should have been. A footbridge that should have crossed the creek was gone. We found rock piles stacked neatly in rows beside the trail, dozens of them, some small, some tall, some had bones placed carefully in the middle, little ones. And then we saw the tree. It was maybe 50 yards off the trail, a big poplar tree, twisted and dead. Nailed into the side of it was an old iron horseshoe. Hanging from the horseshoe was a rope, and tied to the rope, no joke, was a deer skull. But the skull had carvings in it, weird symbols like spirals and claw marks scratched into the bone. Anna wanted to turn around right there, but I was too stubborn. I kept thinking if we just kept going, we'd hit the old trail shelter I remembered from years ago. A small A-frame near the top of the hill where we could figure out where we were. So we pushed on. The fog got thicker, the trail got thinner. At one point I swear we passed the same tree 3 different times. One with a split trunk and a slash of orange fungus across the side. That's when I started to think maybe we weren't just lost. Maybe something was leading us, or worse, circling us. When we finally stumbled into the open area, I almost cried from relief. The old trail shelter was still standing barely, roof half fallen in, moss all over the north wall and some raccoon poop in the corner. But it was shelter, it was a place. We huddled up inside, ate some protein bars with shaking hands and tried to get warm. I told Anna to rest while I checked the area. Didn't want to admit I was looking for signs of whatever that thing was, tracks, fur, anything. But there was nothing, just the quiet again. I climbed back into the shelter and must have fallen asleep because the next thing I remember is Anna screaming. She was standing outside the shelter, staring at the ground. No, no, no. What is that? What is that? At her feet was a perfect circle of stones. We hadn't made it. It hadn't been there when we arrived. Inside the circle was her boot. One of the ones she was wearing the night before. It was dry, clean, the laces perfectly tied. She checked her feet, both boots were on. I've never seen her that pale in my life. She couldn't stop crying. She kept asking me, how did it get that? How did it know? I had no answers. I just knew we couldn't stay. We packed and left that shelter without looking back. But even then, I had the feeling we were still being watched. Not hunted exactly. More like studied, like something out there was learning about us. By the time we left that shelter, I'd given up on the map. Nothing made sense anymore. The land felt like it had folded in on itself. Trees were repeating. I'd walk 30 feet and swear we were back where we started. Even Anna noticed it. She stopped asking if we were going the right way. We both knew we weren't. I don't think there was a right way anymore. The fog was thicker than ever, rolling low across the forest floor, curling around the trees like it was alive. The light never changed. Morning never really became day. There was just this dull gray light coming through bare branches that looked wrong, like we were stuck inside a dream where the sun never quite rose. We didn't talk much, just walked fast, packs bouncing. Every few steps I'd check over my shoulder, and eventually I saw them. Figures, not close, not even fully visible, just dark shapes moving between trees up on the hill, always just out of sight. Too skinny to be human. Moving too fast, but always standing up, always on two legs. The air started to smell like wet fur and rot, like something had died days ago and never cooled down. At one point Anna gagged and dropped to her knees. Her nose started bleeding. I pulled her up and we kept moving, somewhere around late afternoon. If that even means anything in that place. We reached a small, rocky, open area. It looked like a dried-up creek bed, maybe 20 feet wide. There was a tree in the center, completely stripped of bark. Around it were piles of bones, big bones. Some looked like deer, but others looked human. Long, pale leg bones, rib cages. Jaws, but not fresh. These had been picked clean, arranged even, laid in spirals or patterned. Some were stuck upright in the dirt like signs. Anna whispered, "This isn't random." And she was right. Something had put them here. Something had made this. That's when we heard it. Again, the clicking, not from one direction, from all around us. Then the shriek, only this time it was louder. Closer, and it didn't echo. It just hit us like a wave that made our ears ring and our stomachs sick. Anna grabbed my arm and screamed, and I grabbed her and ran. We didn't look back, we just ran. Branches scratched our faces, mud pulled at our shoes. Somewhere behind us, I heard another shriek, then another, and another, higher and higher, all overlapping. They were calling to each other. We tore through the woods until the fog broke and the trees thinned, and suddenly we were standing on a rocky lookout spot. Below us, winding like a ribbon through the valley, was the trail. The real trail with switchbacks and all, and far. Down near the bottom of the hill was the stupid parking lot. We didn't even stop to breathe. We just scrambled down, sliding, grabbing branches, half falling. The whole way. At the last switchback I looked back and there it was, standing. Alone at the edge of the trees. Tall, skinny, its arms and legs too long for its body. Legs bent backward, hooves sunk into the dirt. Its chest moved slowly like it was breathing hard. The skin was so thin I could see its ribs going up and down, and its face, still twisted into that awful almost human snarl, looked straight at me. The eyes were cloudy like old glass, but I felt them lock with mine. Then it opened its mouth, and in my voice it said, "Don't leave me." Anna heard it too. I felt her grip my hand tighter, then more of them stepped out from the trees. 5, 6, maybe more, all the same but slightly different, wrong in different ways. One with a crooked neck, one with broken antlers, one missing a jaw entirely, all of them watching. We ran. We reached the car, shaking and dirty, and I barely got the keys in. As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. They were still standing there, just watching. We didn't stop driving until we hit Asheville. I didn't sleep for 2 days. Anna hasn't spoken about it since. She dropped the class we shared and hasn't answered my texts. I tried reporting it. The park ranger I spoke to looked at me like I was crazy. Said that part of the trail had been closed years ago after a wildfire. No shelters kept up there, no known campsites. I asked him if he'd heard of Walker's Hollow. He paused, said that name hadn't been used in decades. Then he told me quietly that the last time someone reported going up there, it was a rescue mission. A couple of hikers had gone missing. Their gear was found, their boots were found, but not them. No bodies, just bones arranged in spirals. I'm not saying you have to believe me, but if you're ever on the Appalachian Trail and you see a tree marked with a triangle and a circle inside, turn around. Don't answer the howl. And if you hear your own voice echoing from the woods, it's already too late. Story 2. This happened in the fall of 2021, somewhere between Max Patch and Hot Springs on the Appalachian Trail. I haven't told many people about it, partly because I still don't get it myself, and partly because I know how crazy it sounds. There were 5 of us, me, Liam, Caroline, Josh, and Ray. We were all good hikers, not just weekend people. We'd planned a 10-day hike, aimed for early October to avoid crowds and the worst bugs. No one brought GPS. We were trying to keep it simple, paper maps, compasses, and our own smarts. We were about 3 days in when this happened. We camped on a flat spot just off the trail. It had rained the night before, so we expected some morning fog. What we woke up to was something else entirely. The fog was thick, but it wasn't moving. It didn't roll or lift with the sun. It just sat there, still and heavy, like it was stuck. I couldn't see more than 15, maybe 20 feet in any direction. No birds, no bugs, no wind, just the damp and the quiet. Even when I called out to Liam, who was only 10 feet away, my voice sounded muffled, like we were talking through a wall. He was poking at the fire pit, trying to get a flame going. Caroline stood near the edge of camp, watching the trees like they might start moving. We all tried to act normal. Fog happens, right? We packed up slow, hoping it would clear. That's when we heard it. Laughter. High-pitched, definitely kids. At first just one giggle, then a few more, like a group playing tag just out of sight. We froze. I mean, we were deep in the woods, miles from any road or shelter. There shouldn't have been anyone else, let alone children. Ray said maybe it was a scout group, Josh shrugged. Weird but not impossible, he said, but even he sounded unsure. Then the kids appeared, 8 of them pale, quiet, walking in a line with one tall figure behind them that I figured was an adult. They didn't say anything at first, just moved past us. Right through our camp like they didn't see us or didn't care. Their clothes were old-fashioned, dull grays and browns, buttoned up all the way to the neck. No backpacks, no water, no gear. They didn't look dirty, just off. One of the girls stopped and turned to us, her head tilted a little too far, like she wasn't used to how necks worked. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Liam, always." The Joker said, "Heading north, hiking the whole AT." The girl blinked, her lips twitched like she was trying to smile but didn't remember how. "This isn't the Appalachian Trail," she said. Then she turned and kept walking. The rest followed. The tall figure, hooded, face hidden, came last. And then they were gone back into the fog. We just stood there. No one said anything for a long time. Eventually Ray muttered, "Okay, that was messed up." Caroline wanted to pack up and go back south. Liam said we should keep going north. I didn't know what to think. Part of me figured it had to be some kind of joke or we'd walked into a movie set. But deep down, something didn't feel right. We voted 3-2 to push ahead, so we did. We hadn't gone a mile before we started seeing strange stuff. First it was the trees. Some had markings, white stick figures scratched into the bark, not like trail signs. These were rough. One tree had a spiral. Another had a row of slashes, 8 up and down lines, one long, one crossing them all out. Then we found the dates. One tree had a bunch of carvings spaced about a foot apart. 1941, 1951, 1961. It kept going. The last one was 2021, our year. I don't scare easy, but that made my stomach drop. No one talked much after that. We kept moving, but the air felt heavier, like the forest was holding its breath. It never got brighter. The fog stayed with us the whole day. And the worst part, every so often, faint and distant but clear, we kept hearing that laughter, just behind the trees. Never ahead of us, always behind. By late afternoon, none of us were talking. The fog hadn't let up at all. We kept waiting for it to burn off like normal, but it just hung there, thick, still, and cold. The kind of cold that gets into your clothes and stays. We hadn't seen another trail mark in hours. No mile markers, no trail crossings, nothing. It felt like we were walking in circles. Even though we stuck to a straight line as best we could. We tried checking our compasses, but they were all pointing slightly different ways. Josh said it was probably a mineral thing, but even he didn't sound sure. Around dusk, we heard the kids again. Laughter, same sound, same rhythm. Too close. It was different this time, closer and sharper. It would pop up to the left of us, then to the right, then straight ahead, like they were circling us, following us, not playing anymore. Josh stopped and pointed at a tree ahead. Carved into the bark was a spiral, not a normal one. It was jagged and uneven, almost like it was scratched in with something sharp. Inside the spiral were 8 small stick figures. Liam leaned in close, then backed away fast. "They're all missing eyes," he muttered. "We were losing it. Caroline wanted to set up camp before dark." Ray agreed, said hiking blind in fog was a bad idea. We found a spot near a rock wall, not great, but at least we had our backs covered. We set up quickly and agreed to take turns watching in pairs that night. I barely slept. I was on second watch, with Ray around 1:00 in the morning. We realized we hadn't heard Josh in a while. His tent was zipped but empty. No gear, no pack, no sign he walked off. He Didn't snore like usual, wasn't even moving around. We started calling for him, first quietly, then louder. No answer. Caroline joined us, barefoot, flashlight in one hand, knife in the other. We didn't go far, just 20 yards from camp, when we saw him. He was standing perfectly still in the middle of a small open area, surrounded by 8 tiny piles of rocks. Each pile was stacked exactly the same, 3 stones on the bottom, 1 small flat stone on top. The same 8 pattern from before. Josh wasn't moving. Eyes open but empty, pale. He looked right through us when I called his name. He finally spoke. They showed me the real path. That's all he said. Then our flashlights all died at once. No flicker, no warning, just dead. Everything went pitch black and the fog got thicker. I swear to God I heard something breathe out. Not a person, not an animal. It was low and long and sounded wrong, like it didn't come from lungs. Branches snapped all around us. Ray grabbed Josh and we dragged him back to camp, stumbling the whole way. Liam was standing by the fire pit, holding a flare he hadn't lit yet. We got the tent zipped, huddled up, knives out. No one slept. When the lights started coming back the next morning, I unzipped the tent. We were right back in that same open area, same piles of rocks, but now one of them had a small rotted child's shoe placed neatly on top. That's when Caroline lost it. She sat down, shaking, muttering that we needed to get off this trail immediately. Liam said we should go back the way we came, but that was impossible. We had no idea where we were. Josh didn't say a word. He just stared at the shoe. We tried to move fast that morning. No breakfast, just ate energy bars and started hiking downhill. We figured if we kept going down, we'd hit a road or a stream, something. We didn't say it out loud, but we all knew the truth. We weren't on the Appalachian Trail anymore. And whatever trail we were on, someone had put us there. We didn't talk much that morning, not because we were tired, none of us had slept, but because we were scared. Josh still hadn't said another word. He just followed us, eyes down, like he was being led. We moved fast, choosing the steepest downhill we could find. Hopping it would lead us to water, a forest road, anything. We tore through brush, tripped over roots, didn't care. Compass needles kept moving. Phones were still dead. Fog pressed in tighter the lower we went, and that feeling like we were being watched, it hadn't left. About an hour in, Ray spotted something ahead, a structure. We thought maybe it was a trail shelter or a ranger hut. Turned out it was an old, half-rotted lean-to with a fallen roof and moss covering half the frame. We stepped inside anyway, just to breathe. Inside were drawings, dozens of them nailed to the wooden walls. Crayon, charcoal, paint the color of blood. All of them were the same. Stick figures walking in a line into a spiral. In one drawing, 5 stick figures were colored red. The rest were black. There was also a Polaroid picture tacked to the back wall. It was us, standing at Springer Mountain 2 weeks earlier. Same clothes, same gear, same smiles. None of us remembered anyone taking that photo. The moment I saw it, I felt sick. Not the kind you can shake off. The kind that comes from deep down, like your body knows something bad before your mind does. Then we heard the dragging sound. Metal scraping over stone, slow, heavy, right outside. Liam whispered for everyone to shut up. We backed into the far corner behind a stack of old crates. Through the cracks in the wall we saw them. The children. Same 8 kids, same dead expressions. Same clothes. They weren't walking this time. They were standing still in a half circle, humming something without a tune. Their mouths didn't move. Behind them was the tall figure, the adult, still hooded, still silent. He stepped forward and unrolled a huge piece of paper, a map. Our map. Same trail route, same campsites, but now there were new marks, symbols we didn't recognize, loops and slashes and spirals. The trail didn't lead to hot springs anymore. It led right back to that clearing with the stone piles. At the center of the spiral, written in black ink, was one word: return. Josh stepped forward like he was about to walk out and join them. Caroline grabbed him. Ray flicked a lighter. That tiny flame felt like our last defense. We ran. Didn't look back, just booked it through the trees, cutting through thorn bushes and undergrowth. I don't know how long we ran. Maybe an hour, maybe 3. At some point the fog started thinning. The air felt lighter. Sound returned. Birds, leaves rustling, distant water. Then the trees opened up and we hit gravel, a fire road. 5 minutes later, a green U.S. Forest Service truck pulled around the bend. The ranger inside gave us a weird look when he saw our condition: torn clothes, dried blood, no packs. But he didn't ask many questions, just called for help on his radio and drove us to the station near Hot Springs. We told them we got turned around and lost our gear. That's all we said. No one mentioned the kids. No one mentioned the map. A few days later, I went back online and looked up missing person reports. Found 8 cases from the last 40 years. All from that same stretch of trail, all unsolved. Ages ranged from 6 to 12. A few were listed as runaways, most weren't. I also checked about the Linto, not on any map. Rangers said no such building existed there. Josh still won't talk about it. He barely talks at all now. The rest of us don't hike together anymore. But sometimes when I can't sleep, I think about that girl's voice, the way she said it, calm, sure. This isn't the Appalachian Trail. I believe her now. And if you ever find yourself lost in the fog on that part of trail and you hear laughter, don't look for where it's coming from. Just keep moving. And whatever you do, don't answer them. Story 3. The trail register box at Massey Gap felt colder than the air. The metal box had a fine frost on it, like powdered glass. I signed my name, Evan Mallory, Asheville, North Carolina. Then I wrote a note for my fiancé: 7 days of quiet, 10 miles a day, back with a clearer head and better stories. I shut the lid. The bang echoed through the high meadows where wild ponies pawed at frosty grass, their breath making foggy clouds in the dim blue light. If there was a more peaceful place to calm a busy mind, right, I hadn't found it. For the first 2 miles, the world felt brand new. Hooves clipped stone behind me, and a chestnut pony trotted close enough that I could stroke its shaggy mane. Beyond the bald top of Wilburn Ridge, spruce needles glittered under a rising sun. Somewhere to the east, a big woodpecker hammered out a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. I breathed deep, tasting wood smoke on the wind. Odd, because campfires weren't allowed until winter rains came back. I told myself a hunter down in the lowlands was burning field stubble and pushed on. By late afternoon, I reached a sheltered spot below Buzzard Rock and pitched my tent on ground covered with soft needles. While my little stove hissed, I filmed a quick GoPro video. Day 1, easy miles. Strange hint of smoke all day, probably nothing missing. You already, Jules. The stove clicked off. Silence took over the forest again, except for an occasional pop hiss sound, like wet logs steaming inside a faraway fire. I lay there afterward, headlamp off, letting darkness settle in. But as night got thicker, that fire crackle seemed closer, drifting between the ridge pines. Slow pulses, like someone was trying to get dying coals to light again. Cold woke me just after midnight. My breath floated white in the tent. Then a soft scrape, fabric brushing against something rough. My tent door wall pushed inward, pressed by an unseen hand. I froze. Another pop hiss sounded inches from my ear, the unmistakable snap of tree sap boiling. I fumbled for the zipper, yanked it open, and shone my headlamp into the trees. Nothing except a faint orange glow floating 20 yards away. A single hot ember, brightening, dimming. Brightening again like a firefly trapped in a jar. I tried to stare at it, but the light vanished the moment I focused. Wind blew through the spruce tops above, yet the air smelled sharper, the smoke thicker. With no courage to check it out, I zipped the door and lay stiff until dawn washed the ridge in gray. Morning showed something I couldn't explain. The rainfly, once moss green, had a streak of soot the width of a hand. It smeared down from the top to the stake loop. I touched the mark and the black stuff got on my fingertip. Somehow a burning ember had brushed the fabric without melting it. I packed quickly, eager to leave Buzzard Rock. The trail climbed toward Mount Rogers under a sky thin as milk. Every turn in the path gave the same smell, wood smoke, but now mixed with the sour note of singed hair. At Wilburn Ridge I paused to drink in spotted hoof prints, yet several were burned black, edges sharp as cookie cutters burned into the dirt. Steam curled from one as though it had cooled only moments earlier. A pony herd grazed 100 yards off. None limped or seemed hurt. Still, unease crawled up my spine like cold drizzle under a collar. Late light slanted gold between rhododendron thickets when I found a level spot beneath 2 hemlocks. Their trunks leaned together like friends talking, shielding me from bitter wind. I gathered dead twigs, careful not to break the fire ban, and settled into my sleeping bag. Twilight painted the tent walls yellow, then purple. Sometime in the dark hours, a shape loomed against the tent wall. Kneeling, shoulders hunched, lightning silent and distant flashed on the horizon, lighting up a shadow whose head was tilted as though listening to my heartbeat. I slapped the knife clipped to my tent roof, unzipped the door, and jabbed my light forward. The figure was gone, but on the ground lay a neat pile of cedar shavings. They formed an arrow, its point aimed south, deeper into the wild. The shavings were smoking at their tips, tiny curls turning to gray dust without flame. I scooped a handful still warm and scattered them in the wind. Sleep left me. With each hour the air grew warmer, my breath no longer visible. Water beaded on the map inside my journal. When I turned the page to tomorrow's date, the ink bubbled and ran, the paper itself curling as if held above a candle. I wanted to believe dawn would make sense of it, that daylight would blow away childish fear. Instead, sunrise lit the forest in bruised purple, and every step south felt like walking down into an oven. My pulse drummed in my ears. Sweat traced cold little rivers down my ribs, though the thermometer read 42 degrees. Around me, sap bled from spruce knots and sizzled on the bark. I quickened my pace, repeating a quiet chant, 7 days, 10 miles, clear head. But behind that thought, another one clawed for attention. Something out here is burning, and it wants me to follow the smoke. The fallen hemlock looked as if a giant hand had twisted it from the soil and slammed it across the white marked trail. Its broken top blocked the trail so completely I couldn't even crawl under the branches. I studied my map and spotted a faint dotted line, Devil's Ladder, an unofficial shortcut said to cut a mile off the ridge if you were willing to endure knee-busting steep slopes. At that moment, the main trail felt like a chimney blowing smoke straight at me, so I chose the detour and plunged into the thick woods. Almost at once the forest temperature jumped. My breath no longer steamed, instead a damp. Heat pressed against my skin, warm enough that sweat soaked under my pack straps even though my watch still insisted it was 45 degrees. Sap blistered from spruce trunks and dripped to the leaf litter with a hiss, as though the trees themselves were cooking from inside. I checked my phone to mark the side trail, but the signal bars dropped to 0 before the screen faded to black. Battery dead. I told myself I could navigate by compass just fine, yet something about the phone's sudden silence felt like a door closing behind me. Devil's Ladder earned its name with every step. The path sloped downward so steeply I half skied on loose needles. Around me the air grew thicker, shimmering in waves that made the nearest boulders wobble like mirages. Then I smelled it again, burning hair mixed with scorched cedar. My pulse pounded high in my throat. I rounded a sharp bend and halted, 5 paces ahead, half hidden by rhododendron leaves. Stood the man from last night. He faced away, shoulders hunched, blackened skin cracked in flakes that showed depths of glowing red, like he was hot iron left too long in the fire. His clothes had melted to his skin, rags fluttered in wind that I could not feel, smoke curled from his scalp in thin blue threads. He turned and those ember eyes fixed on mine without blinking. I wanted to scream, but the air in my lungs tasted of ash. The figure stepped forward. Every branch he brushed caught fire in a brief tongue of flame that vanished the instant he passed, leaving needles unhurt but smoking at the tips. Their green turned ghost white. He extended a hand. Sparks pinwheeled off his fingertips and died before touching the ground, as if the fire existed only for him. Instinct broke the spell. I stumbled backward, boots skidding on gravel. The sudden movement seemed to startle the thing. Its head tilted, cracking skin along its neck that glowed brighter. Hotter, without warning, the image broke apart. My vision wavered in ripples of heat blur. The GoPro strapped to my pack beeped an error tone, its screen filling with static lines even though it was powered off. My nostrils flooded with the chemical smell of melting wires. I turned and ran. The slope was so steep I barely controlled each stride, bouncing off tree trunks, branches whipping my arms. Behind me came slow, deliberate footsteps, charcoal crunching under burned feet. No matter how wildly I zigzagged, the walking sound never sped up, but it never paused either. It sounded patient, unstoppable, like the tick of a clock marking the moment the forest would catch fire. By the time dusk bled through the tree tops, I had lost the Devil's Ladder path and found myself in a narrow valley choked with dead hemlock skeletons. Dead man's draw, if the locals' warnings were right. Even here the ground sweated. Heat. I slashed at vines to clear a flat patch no bigger than a coffin and threw up my tent, hands trembling so badly the poles clicked like chattering teeth. Night sealed the valley. At once the forest began to breathe, a low rasping inhale, then a soft bellows exhale, again and again. Each breath let out a faint red glow that rolled over the hillsides like hot coals stirred by wind. Inside the tent, darkness pressed against the nylon. My watch read 92 degrees though outside. It had to be near freezing. Sweat soaked my clothes. Then the footsteps returned, shuffling in a widening circle, circling. I heard skin crackle with every step, like ice shifting on a thawing lake. The thing whispered my name, drawn out. Syllables stretched thin, as if breathing out through torn vocal cords. Every time it spoke, the temperature spiked. My water bag ballooned with expanding air until its seams creaked. Hours dragged past. I held my multi-tool like a charm that could fend off fire. Just before dawn, the footsteps stopped. Silence settled so suddenly my ears rang. Then something pressed against the tent wall directly over my heart. A hard, bumpy shape, smaller than a fist, yet impossibly hot. Nylon sizzled. I jerked away, stuffing my sleeping bag into the corner. The object slid down the outside and thumped to the ground with a sound like wet ash. Falling through the thin fabric, a faint red glow pulsed. I forced myself to unzip the door. Outside lay a child's sneaker, or what was left of one, canvas mostly. Burned away, rubber warped and cracked, the toe melted into a sad grin. Inside the blackened sole, numbers showed through the burn, 1986. As I stared, a single ember flared in the hollow toe, then winked out, leaving the shoe cold and silent. The sun crested the ridge, but dead man's draw stayed dim, as if light itself feared to stay. I packed in minutes. Every move was filled with the thought hammering in my skull. The fire was following me, and it had just shown me the year it first learned my name. I ran until my lungs tasted like metal, and the heat behind me faded to the faint rustle of cooling ash. At a bend in the valley, the trees gave way to a rough surface road slick with last night's rain. Dawn had not truly broken. Only a dim gray glow seeped through the clouds, but steam already curled from the gravel in lazy spirals. The farther I walked, the more the air smelled of wet ashes and something sweeter like pine sap boiling. An hour later I saw it, a farmhouse hunched at the road's end. Nothing left but black bones of framing and a stubborn stone chimney that leaked gray steam. The porch roof had collapsed. Charred roof beams lay like broken wings across the steps. Heat still came from the wreckage, shimmering in waves that bent the world behind it out of shape. I wanted to go around the place entirely, but my legs buckled at the sight of a black and white police car parked in the weeds, county symbol flacking from the door, emergency lights off. I staggered closer. With a hiss, the driver's window rolled down. A woman in a tan uniform leaned out. Exhaustion showed in the lines around her eyes. Her badge read Riddle. The name fit the morning. Words got stuck in my throat, but I managed. Something's after me. It's on fire and it walks. Sheriff Ada Riddle studied me for a heartbeat too long, then popped the passenger door. Get in. We'll talk. Where there's water. Between us and the ruins, the vinyl seat burned my palms with leftover heat, too hot for cloth. Untouched by flame, we rolled forward 30 yards and stopped beside a rusted water trough. Half full of rainwater, steam rose from the hood where my gloves had landed. House burned 4 nights ago, she said, watching the ruins in her side mirror. Neighbors smelled burning bacon at 3:00 a.m. Fire crew found the family huddled near that back door. Father, mother, teenage boy. No fire starter. No wiring problem, just caught fire. Her gaze flicked to the burned streak across my pack. You saw. Someone saw him, heard him. He followed me down Devil's Ladder. I described the ember eyes, the skin like cracked pottery over hot coals. The shoe stamped 1986. With each detail, her face got a shade paler. 86, she rubbed the bridge of her nose. I was 12 that year. 3 hikers burned to death in a cabin off Green Cove Road. Volunteer rescuers found only footprints burned into the floor. Case went cold. Folks blame a homeless man who died in his own chimney fire that winter. Swear his ghost marks anyone coming onto these ridges. She laughed once sharp. I never believed ghost stories until this week. She turned the dash cam on just in case and handed me a lukewarm water bottle. I drank in big gulps. The instant metal touched my lips, a hot wind whooshed across the field. curling smoke upward from the trees beyond the house. Shape unfolded, taller than before, every joint glowing deeper, as if stoked too. White heat. The temperature inside the cruiser jumped, plastic on the steering. Wheel got soft, the being stepped onto the road, grass beneath its feet turned to gray stalks that burst into wisps of flame and died. Its gaze locked on me. Through the windshield, the cruiser's engine ticked, metal expanding. Sheriff. Riddle threw the car into reverse, but the tires only hissed on melting tar. She cursed, then jumped out, grabbed a canvas fire blanket from the trunk, and hurled it at the ghostly figure. The fabric opened midair like a sail, hitting the creature's shoulders. For an instant the flames dimmed, the form flickered, edges blurring. I stumbled after her, yanked a half-barrel off its stand and tipped a flood of cold rainwater across the road. Steam roared upward, covering us. In hot fog, through the cloud, I heard the being howl like wood exploding in a kiln and felt the wash of heat rush then fade, as if something important had been dampened. When the steam cleared, the blanket lay smoldering on top of a dark man-shaped burn on the road. No figure, only a circle of char so black it swallowed the morning light. The sheriff breathed out shakily. Let's hope that buys us some time. We drove 2 miles. It felt like 20, engine knocking from hot oil. At Sparrow Gap Ranger Station, she drove the cruiser under a metal roof and turned it off. Rangers came out, radios already buzzing with talk about sudden fires on the ridge, grass fires that vanished. Ada told them to get fire extinguishers and wet sheets. Inside the small office, I scrubbed soot off my hands, skin peeled away in tender pink sheets. Under it, new blisters rose, perfect ovals mirroring the burned fingerprints left on my tent. I wrapped them in bandages, but heat seeped through, a pulse that matched my own heartbeat. Through the window, I saw Ada lean against her cruiser's hood, where my hands had braced earlier. A black handprint still glowed faintly, thin threads of smoke curling up like incense. A ranger aimed a hose at it, but water broke around an invisible shield. Droplets hissed and slid off, unable to touch the burn mark. The sheriff met my eyes across the lot, and in her look was the empty certainty that what we'd faced had not been beaten, only put off. A gust of wind brought the smell of new smoke from somewhere higher on the mountain. The radio crackled. Control. We've got a new fire starting above Buzzard Rock. Looks like a smoke column. Ada's shoulders dropped. I felt the heat blooming under my bandages, traveling from cheek to collar bone, as if mapping the path of fire still to come. Somewhere out in the trees, a slow, careful footstep crunched across charcoal. I realized the being was already moving again, patient, careful, not rushing, taking the long way down the mountain to find me. 7 days I had promised Jules, 10 miles a day, and back with a clearer head. But some trips once started burned far longer than planned, and some paths once walked never truly let you leave their smoke. Story 4. I caught the first bit of sunrise off the Wolf Creek Trailhead sign and felt my nerves jump. Someone had nailed a broken board across the info kiosk, "Keep quiet after dark," then half ripped it away like they changed their mind halfway through the warning. I pried it loose and slipped it into my pack, telling Jenna I wanted it as a souvenir. Truth was, I hated leaving warnings behind. The air smelled of wet rocks and cold pine sap. Fog lay so thick across the switchbacks that each breath bounced back against my cheeks. Jenna's hiking poles clicked a steady beat beside me. But everything else, wind, birds, far-off road noise, had been muffled to nothing. We climbed in silence until the damp reached through my shirt and made my shoulders tight. Just past the first flat spot, the fog thinned enough to show the trail's dirt line. That was when I noticed the boot prints, one set deep and alone in the mud, size 13 at least. They went maybe 50 yards, turned to the left, then vanished where the path crossed bare rock. I searched for the next print in the leaves beyond, but the ground there looked untouched. No broken twigs, no skid marks, nothing. My stomach turned. Whoever made those tracks walked off trail into brush so thick even deer leave clear paths, yet he or it left no trace. I told myself a hunter in light boots might do that. But I kept glancing over my shoulder for the next half-mile. By early afternoon, the sun made holes in the white out, and we stopped by an unnamed spring. The guidebook promised always had water. Water trickled out of moss-covered limestone, clear as glass. But when Jenna knelt to fill the water bag, she froze. Alex, look. A crisscross of sharpened sticks lay stuck under the surface, each stick shaved to twin points, crossed like a beginner's animal trap. They stank of sweetness turned rotten, like fermented fruit and wet mulch. I lifted one with my knife tip. The bark slid off slippery as eel skin, showing pale wood full of tiny holes the size of sewing needles. I dropped it and tasted metal in my mouth. We camped a little uphill where the ground leveled off, a narrow shelf just wide enough for our two-person tent. I forced a laugh while tying the last rope. Bears sleep 30 yards that way. We leave over here. No problem. Jenna nodded and squeezed my hand, but I felt the pulse in her fingers racing faster than mine. Night covered the forest by 9. Fog drifted back in thicker than before, and moonlight flickered like a dying bulb behind the clouds. I woke with a start to a sound that didn't belong. Crunch. Pause. Crunch, not leaves. Rustling. Footsteps, careful and measured, circling. My watch read 2:03. The morning. Jenna's eyes shone in the dim light. I unzipped the tent halfway and slid the headlamp strap around my wrist. The beam cut maybe 20 feet before the fog swallowed it. But in that light, 3 shapes crouched among the mountain laurels. Scarecrow thin, arms and legs wrapped in what looked like burlap strips clotted with moss. Their heads turned stiffly, no bobbing like people adjusting balance. Just a single smooth pivot toward me. Eye sockets reflected nothing, flat and dull as if someone had made faces from river rocks. I stepped forward. Instinct screamed to scare them off. Hey, my voice cracked, the figures flinched. One uncoiled to its full height, at least 7 feet, and raised 2 dead branches in each hand. Click, click. The sticks met perfectly, copying Jenna's laugh from dinner, brittle and bright in the quiet. My skin crawled so hard it almost tore. Leave, I shouted, taking another step, but the headlamp shook in my fist and the beam jumped across tree trunks. In that flashing light, the figure vanished. No stumbling, no breaking brush, only a blur of gray limbs melting up the slope, then absolute silence. Even the creek we'd heard all evening had gone quiet. I backed inside, zipped the flap and pressed my shoulder against Jenna's. We sat like that until dawn turned the fog a dirty silver. Outside the door, the ground around the tent was covered with prints. Bare, narrow, each foot 6 toes wide and ending in tiny claw points. They formed a perfect circle, toes aimed inward, as though the 3 had stood equally spaced all night, just watching the tent walls move as we breathed. Jenna whispered, "We're leaving now." I nodded, unable to speak. As I put on my pack, the souvenir board shifted against my back. I almost threw it into the woods, but I couldn't bring myself to let it go. We hiked out without breakfast. The forest gave nothing but the hollow echo of our own footsteps, and every so often I swore. I heard sticks tapping together, click, click, deep in the fog behind us. The fog never quite lifted, only stretched itself thinner as we hurried south. By what I guessed was late morning, my watch kept skipping minutes. We had pushed through nearly 20 miles of switchbacks. The pack straps rubbed my collarbones raw, but I refused to slow down. Every bird's song seemed to perch above us in the tree tops, as if the birds were following our escape but wouldn't dare land on the trail itself. Whenever I stopped to sip water, the woods went pin-drop still, then got noisy again the moment I moved, like a show. Restarting after the critic leaves the room, we reached the ridge below Chestnut Knob just before noon. Gray clouds stacked like stone blocks overhead. The forest floor gave off a sour metal smell, wet pennies baked in sun that never reached the ground. Along a mossy bank we found pine trunks stripped of bark. The strips had been cut into human shapes and nailed head high, all of them facing the cliff wall, as if some crazy artist wanted the stick figures to watch the rock instead of the trail. Rust streaks showed under every nail, but when I touched the streaks, my fingers came away clean. The red was in the wood grain itself, dark as dried blood. Jenna's breath started coming fast between her teeth. I tucked an arm around her pack and guided her forward, promising that 2 more ridges would drop us onto the service road. I no longer believed my own words. By late afternoon we found a sliver of flat ground pressed tight against a shale cliff. No way to get to us from behind, and only a 5-foot opening to get in. We pitched the tent there, door facing out, rainfly pulled tight. I loaded both pistols and placed them within easy reach. Jenna tied our last piece of rope across the only entrance, attaching it to her tent stakes, and hanging my metal cup so it would clink if anything brushed the line. Sunset never brightened the clouds. They just got thicker until day and night became the same dark gray. Sometime past midnight, I know because my phone beeped once then died. We both jerked awake to the faintest clink of metal, my cup shaking against itself. I rolled onto one elbow, pistol in hand, listening. Something crouched just outside the tent, breathing slow as a diver saving air. The rope twanged again, quieter as though fingertips traced its length. Then a voice spoke inches from the nylon, wide. "You bring the gun," my own voice. Tone, sound, the hitch on the word gun I'd made earlier that day when helping Jenna downhill. A perfect copy, whispered with all the warmth gone. The same sentence repeated, but now in Jenna's tone, fragile and cracking. She clamped a hand over her mouth. I felt her heartbeat pounding through her wrist. I cleared my throat. "We're armed," I said, voice low but steady. "Step away now or I will shoot." The forest breathed out. Cicadas, crickets, everything that had been chirping went dead. 2 seconds later, footsteps retreated, 2 measured steps. Pause, 2 steps like a marching team in soft slippers. The sound faded, but the quiet stayed. An awful emptiness that pressed against my eardrums until they rang. We lay awake until dawn seeped through the tent in a colorless smear. When I crawled out, my boots slid on damp rock. The rope was gone, every inch of it, yet the stake still stood. My cup lay on its side, handle threaded by a braided loop that hadn't been there the night before. Our bootlaces had been cut from both pairs of boots while we slept and woven into an elegant hangman's noose. A gray clay fingerprint smeared the tent zipper, flecked with grit that glittered like bone dust. Jenna stared, then turned the color of paste. We didn't speak. We packed up in 6 minutes flat, no coffee, no water stop. As we put on our packs, the clouds above the cliff tilted. For the briefest second, I thought I saw a thin figure perched on the rock face itself, arms and legs folded like a praying mantis. A blink later, only wet rock remained. We started downhill. The trail, slick and narrow. Behind us, far up the ridge, two sticks clacked together, making a perfect copy of Jenna's laugh. I tightened my grip on the pistol and kept walking, counting each breath until I lost track of the number. Wind scratched the ridge like sandpaper, but thunder refused to crack. Just a low, endless rumble that chased us down the slope. GPS signal bars blinked on and off, even though the sky stayed open. Every time the screen froze, the mileage ticked backward, eating away our progress. Toward Burke's garden, my watch claimed mid-morning, yet the air tasted of coming night. We power-walked the narrow ridge until the forest thinned into scrubby grass. That was where we saw it, the shadow waiting on the next rise. Tall, too thin, shoulders draped in something that fluttered without wind. Its head leaned to one side like a dog trying to figure out a strange sound. Then, with scary purpose, it raised one impossibly long arm, no bend at the elbow, and pointed downhill, the same direction we were already moving. Jenna whispered, "It's hurting us." I could not disagree. We cut left onto the faint side trail, racing down the slope. Minutes later, a sharp digital click broke the quiet behind a maple tree, then another farther uphill. When I looked at the bark, I found a black cube, an old Bluetooth speaker jammed in a knot-hole red light. Blinking, a delayed echo of our own footsteps spilled from it, 3 seconds behind. The tiny sound bounced through the valleys, multiplying until it felt like dozens of boots closing in. I smashed the speaker with a rock. The moment the plastic cracked, a whistle blew from somewhere out of sight. An elk call pitched far too low, vibration so deep my ribs hummed. Birds pinwheeled from the treetops, some dropping stunned onto the ground. We had 2 trails left on the map, both through Dead Oaks Hollow. The first ended under a landslide, so we plunged into the second, a creek bed choked with limestone and slick leaves. Halfway down, the ground opened under Jenna's boot. She yelped, flailing, and I grabbed her pack just in time, pulling her back from the edge of a sinkhole, maybe 15 feet across and twice that deep. Its floor looked like a trash pile. Deer jawbones, bare skulls, a mountain lion skull bleached white, human teeth, molars. Front teeth glinted among the bones like seashells on dark sand. A fresh pair of upper front teeth rested on a flat rock, the roots still pink. I gagged. Above us, voices began to chant together, neither loud nor rushed. Map coordinates read out in a flat voice, descending numbers between each line: 13, 12, 11. Figures ringed the sinkhole rim, a full circle of pale watchers crouched so low their wrists hung past their knees. They rocked together, synchronized, until their joints popped like breaking sticks. Lightning finally tore open the clouds. In the flash, every watcher stood at full height, arms spread, ragged bark capes snapping like cloth. Thunder hammered the valley. A slab of limestone broke off the edge and crashed into the sinkhole, tilting high enough to form a rough ramp. "Move!" I shoved Jenna up the rock and scrambled behind her. Limestone rang beneath our boots. Something slid after us, bare feet slapping in a different rhythm. But the next lightning strike blinded me, and all I saw were spots. We broke into a downhill sprint, branches clawing our packs, the slope steep enough to fall if we missed a step. Behind us, the coordinated stomp of many feet burst into a run. No shouts, no barking dogs, only that same exact rhythm driving faster. At the service road, a hunter's truck idled, tailgate open, fake ducks rattling in the back. I waved. Both arms, gun still in my hand. The man's eyes went wide. He clicked the safety off his shotgun but didn't raise it. Jenna collapsed beside the bumper, sobbing. Gravel dust rose behind us, but nothing came out of the trees. Forest Ranger Hal Teague arrived 10 minutes later in a green pickup. He listened in. Silence while I told the whole story, leaving out nothing this time. When I finished, he rubbed the brim of his hat and asked only one question. "You two cross Dead Oaks Hollow?" We nodded. "Locals. Call them Ridge Watchers," he said, voice soft enough I almost missed it. "They follow noise, don't let a thing go that rattles the ridge after dark." He offered hot coffee in a paper cup. I rapped, shaking fingers around it, then froze. The cup's handle was looped by a neat braided string, my boot lace, though I had replaced the laces with rope that morning. 3 weeks later, back home in Richmond, a padded envelope arrived with no return address. Inside lay the broken warning board from the kiosk and a tiny memory card labeled 2:03 a.m. in tight pencil writing. I slid the card into my laptop. A single sound file played, my own voice whispered, "Why'd you bring the gun?" 13 times, perfect and cold. Each repetition ended with a wet breath that fogged the laptop microphone somehow on the recording itself. When the loop ended, a faint click-click echoed like sticks copying Jenna's laugh. I keep the board locked in the attic. Some nights, quiet nights after dark, I swear I hear that distant whistle, impossibly low, threading through the rafters while the house holds its breath.